Several days and a stupid amount of money later, the ProMaster is almost fully insulated. I just have one more trip to Lowe's because I ran out of spray foam stuff, and then I should be good to go, can put up the studs, can put up the walls, move on. But I'm going to tell you everything I did to insulate my van. I'm also going to tell you why so much of what I read on the internet about insulating one's van is bullshit. Let's start with sound deadening material. This stuff comes in a big box with a big price tag. I think it was like 60 to 70 bucks. And I spent most of last Sunday rolling it on manually with the heat gun just to get it to attach to the damn wall. Now the reviews on this were that this would make a dramatic effect, keeping it quiet inside your van. And that sounded amazing because I'm a really light sleeper. So I didn't want to hear in the middle of the night people walking past the van and have to get my gun and get freaked out. Well, it makes a little bit of an effect when you knock on the material and then knock on a hollow door. But barely. You're supposed to get it, you see that? You're supposed to get it perfectly smooth. Now, I know that these gym teacher arms are not that impressive, but I was putting all my weight on it and I could not get it perfectly smooth. You had to heat it with a heat gun, it was a pain in the ass. And the reviews of this were from people who said, when I'm driving down the highway, the creaky noises in the back of the van are less noticeable. Who the hell drives down the highway in complete silence? Nobody. You either have the radio on, or you're on your phone, or if you're a complete elitist, you listen to a podcast that you downloaded and told everybody at work that you listen to. Too much time, too much money, not enough results. Next. You have a couple choices of material to insulate the van. The most expensive is to just pay someone to come in and spray foam the whole damn thing. And in retrospect, I'm not quite sure why I didn't do that. Yes, it is the most expensive. It can cost $500 up, but for the time saving and having somebody in some kind of full-blown white Darth Vader costume come and do it all for me, I think it would have been totally worth it. So I use something called polyisoboard. On one side, it has reflective thermal tape. There's only one spot in the van where I put that tape facing inward, and I didn't do it for the rest of the van for a damn good reason. I'm gonna stop looking weird and get my wallet and get out of here and get this big bus going. If you Google van conversion insulation, you will see most people put that reflective tape that it's facing on the inside of the van, and that's because they're trying to keep heat into the van. Well, when I started to look at where those people lived, they were like in Canada. Do you know how cold it is in Canada? They have moose, they have winter. We don't have that in the South. We have winter, but we don't have moose. The fact of the matter is, in the South, yes, we do have a winter. Yes, it does get cold as all hell here sometimes. But for the most part, in the larger part of the year, you're doing everything you can to keep the heat out. So I turned my insulation around and pointed the heat out this way. You do not want to use that pink fluffy stuff, the fiberglass insulation, and that's because it can absorb moisture, and keeping moisture up against metal is stupid. It's going to rust out the van, so that's not even an option. If you see someone doing it, just say, bless their heart. Your other option is something called Reflectix. It's really thin, it's also really expensive, and it looks like bubble wrap that's coated on both sides with aluminum foil. That's not what it is, but it acts as a thermal barrier, and you'll see people all over the internet just take that stuff right up here, and it's so easy to use and it's so easy to cut that you can insulate your van really quickly with it. However, the science behind that is that those kind of thermal backings have to have an air pocket in order to reflect the heat back. So if you tape it up to your van, you just made it null and void. So, you know, good effort, but it's not going to do a damn thing. To apply the polyisoboard, I used a roll of paper to cut templates of all the different squares. It took an insane amount of time to do all that. If you follow no other advice for insulating your van conversion, please take note of this. Everyone uses a different thickness of polyisoboard or whatever other foam they're using to insulate their van, and it is directly related to the make and model of whatever van they're using, and they are all different. Everything I read said on the ceiling, because heat rises and you're trying to capture that in the winter, you should use between 1.5 and 2 inches of polyiso board. So I diligently ran out to the store to get my 2 inches of polyiso, and I put it up on the ceiling and then realized that 2-inch polyiso board is not flush with the rib of the van. So I would have to take furring strips and deepen the ribs, a huge pain in the ass. Your ceiling insulation is largely dictated by how thick the ribs of your van are. Go with that, not necessarily what someone else is doing, and they may need more insulation than you do. You use something called 3M77 spray. It's basically rubber cement in a can. Remember that stuff we used to all get high on elementary school? No? Just me? Okay. All right, well, you spray that stuff on to the van, and then you spray it onto the back of the polyiso, and you stick it up there. And if you're like me and don't have any help, you then have to hold it there for an ungodly amount of time and wait for it to really take. And that was another thing that I didn't plan really well, because all of the van conversion videos I watched, there's like some dude doing most of the work and then his adorable girlfriend just holding things in place. Well, I have to do both jobs, so that was really difficult on the ceiling. I had to get 2x4s and just prop it up there and hold everything in place, because I mean, I can barely, I'm 5'2", and that's never helped me in life. Being short has lots and lots of disadvantages. Next. Spray foam in all the cracks and crevices. You have 3 options. Number 1, spray foam in big gap. Do not put that anywhere near your van. It expands way too much. The next one is Great Stuff. That's the brand name. Great Stuff for cracks. That is really good in the ribs of the van. It expands almost too much, but just enough. And then really what you're going to use the most of is Great Stuff for windows and doors. It does expand a little, but not a lot. You really don't want to blast this stuff all over the van and then have to cut a bunch of waste down and not use it. Once the Great Stuff is set, it will get really hard, and you can just take a razor blade and cut down so that everything is nice and flush, easy surface to work with. You're good to go. Most people will run their electric and their water lines through the empty ribs of the van, then insulate, then put their walls up, then put their cabinets up. That way they never have to stare at their wiring. I am absolutely not going to do that, and here's why. In a house, when you have mechanical chases and you have studs and you have drywall, if you want to make a change or a repair to your electric, you just crawl up into the attic and find the junction boxes, and then you can snake wires up and down, or if you really have to, you can cut out a piece of drywall, fix what you need to, patch it back up, no big deal. But that is not how this works. Once you insulate and then you put up your whatever kind of siding and your cabinets, if you ever want to make a change, you have to take all that down. You cannot get up or underneath to adjust your wiring. So there isn't a chance in hell that I'm going to run wires and plumbing through these spaces that it would be a nightmare to get in and fix. So downside, I may be able to see some of my wiring, but I'm going to try to run it through the cabinets, and I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. And then that way, if I want to make changes or fix something in the future, it's going to be really easy to do. So I'm insulating this whole thing before a single wire or a single water line ever makes it in this van. The hardest thing to insulate were the wheel covers. They're curved, they're awkward, they have this rim on the top. You can't cut anything solid to fit over them. I wasted money with that sound dampening stuff. We already went through that. I'll get over it eventually. But the only thing that really worked for that was duct insulation. It's kind of stretchy, it has an adhesive back, and you can just pat it down over the wheel cover just to give it a little bit of insulation. I don't really know anything else that would take care of that. However, the duct insulation sucked to work with. It does have an adhesive backing. I think that scratch and sniff stickers, frankly, have more adhesive than that stuff, but it was the only thing that I could really find to solve that problem. So that's what I used for the wheel covers. And then anything else in here that was curved and awkward to insulate, for the little bit of stickiness that you get, it at least does something, which is better than nothing in here. So I am going to pack up and head back to Lowe's, where they must know me by name by now. I've got to get studs, I've got to get drywall, I've got to get drywall, dumbass. I've got to get, what the hell is it called? I need a Coke Zero. Plywood. I need to get plywood.